I know that sometimes I don't see surrender as you winning, fam.
The things we fear will actually be reversed.
Why do you think it's still difficult for us as believers to practice or even have a conception of permanent surrender?
I'm struggling to come to church because I don't see how other people are worshiping God while I'm in this pain.
So you mean I don't have to do anything to receive this from God?
Jehovah Nissi.
How knows?
He's holy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Every Nation Bryanston podcast. Stuff we did not say on Sunday.
That's right. You sound like that Xhosa. Do you remember the Xhosa news commentator way back in the day?
Yes,
she got like these massive...
Dinithanda nonke makhaya.
That's it. That's exactly.
That is the biggest compliment of my life.
Listen.
Thank you. We're off to a great start already.
Yeah,
my favorite guest on the podcast. Zealous?
Yes.
You have some way to come up, but do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes. Hi guys, my name is Zealous, aka
right.
Zeal.
I'm so concerned about this podcast.
We just need a horn.
Exactly.
We need a horn today, but yeah.
I think we'll write to management
I
and
think
get a
so.
horn
That's right.
next week. Yeah?
I think so. We'll submit a document or Google Docs.
I thought you were gonna come with a jingle.
Wait, bro. I've got him check. I've got him
Okay,
locked.
let's not jump ahead.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Fantastic. So in case this is your first time listening to the podcast, we are on a journey as Every Nation Bryanston talking about what is the sermon title again?
What if
we believed?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. The leader of the series is correcting us.
What
if we believed? So, Pastor Sev, I didn't give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. So we can do that. And shortly after that, you can give us a segue about the sermon we actually discussed this week titled Jehovah Nissi.
That's right. So what if we believed? We are on week, is this?
3.
Week 3.
Week 3.
Yeah.
Week 3. So Jehovah Nissi. And Sunday, we're looking at Exodus 17.
Yeah.
And you got this moment where Moses is now facing the Amalekites for the very first time going to war.
Yeah.
Very first time. And in fact, the way it comes across, it's as if like the Amalek attacks the Israelites for no specific reason.
Yeah.
But if you think through like Roman Empire movies you've watched, every single army will kind of march out with these like massive banners in front of them.
Yeah.
And it has their flag in front to kind of give the picture to the enemy that these group of people are on their way. Sure. Whilst in these times, people would carry banners that had images of their gods.
Yeah.
And so the idea was, if my God is stronger than your God, we will win the battle. Right? But the Israelites have never been to war. They've been in slavery for hundreds of years. Yeah. And now these people are attacking them. And all of a sudden Moses goes up with Aaron and Hur, and he's in this interesting position of his hands raised, whilst Joshua is on the ground with the sword fighting with the enemies. And every time he realized that his hands were raised, they were winning.
Yeah.
But when his hands kind of descended, they started losing.
Yeah.
And essentially, when I think through that, obviously they eventually win. And then Moses says, Jehovah Nissi. In other words, that all along, God has been our banner. We might not have had a pole or a standard, as they used to call it. But we didn't realize that even in war, this God who rescued us from Israel is the same God who fights for us in the wilderness, fights for us in our battles. And I think for me, one of the things that kind of stood up just in that scripture is the permanent posture of surrender for the Christian in battle.
So good.
I think we always have pictures of what strength looks like. And sometimes even the idea of surrender can feel like a strengthless posture.
Yeah.
But I love that in this scripture, the same imagery is pointing us to a bigger imagery of the greater Moses, Jesus Christ, who also has his hands raised, nailed to the cross, his hands are up in the air, and yet that seems like loss to the enemy, but it's actually victory in Christ.
Yeah.
So that was Sunday, Jehovah Nissi.
And I mean, I really loved the illustration you gave at church. I mean, I don't know, Bakang, if you were there, you know, Siv was just chilling there with his hands.
He really enjoyed it.
Yeah, right. And I mean, look, I think as a guy, your natural posture in defense is trying to fight.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right? And I know that obviously we have these fight or flight concepts that we keep wrestling with in our minds in trying to understand that, hey, this is the way that I'm supposed to respond, right? To like challenges, situations, all those things. But I found it quite profound that there are so many connections, even from the beginning, that link back to the cross, you know? You know, I mean, obviously with the hands being raised and being in a posture of surrender, I know that, sometimes I don't see surrender as you're winning, fam.
It doesn't seem like an act of strength.
It doesn't seem like an act of strength because we are in a city, in a world that says, no, you have to fight.
Yeah.
You have to protect what is yours. And if you don't, then it means you don't care about yourself.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And in most cases, what the world will tell us is that you can't be surrendered. You can't be in a posture of kneeling or having your hands up because you're leaving yourself vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like you're just vulnerable and now you're just allowing people just in jail, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, the weird thing for me, I look at Jesus and I go, I think that was his constant posture. The question of surrender is not necessarily just surrendering.
Yeah.
It's surrendering to who?
That's so good.
Every single one of us surrender to something every day. We might not always articulate it, but what exactly is our heart lifted towards every day?
Yeah.
Jesus says, I only do what I see the Father doing.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm constantly in the posture of surrender. Now, when he is engaging the Pharisees and engaging the disciples, it's strong and it's faith-filled. But I think that strength is birthed from surrendering to the right thing versus I just surrender, you know, the white flag to everything. Or
to everything
like
that
the way
beckons.
you fight or engage with your wife. When I engage with my wife or my children or my friends without a surrendered heart to God, I tend to be unnecessary. And I think that's true for many of us. Instead of allowing our hearts to live before the Lord, we're trying to actually just protect our hearts from people. And I think those are two different postures.
Sure.
And why do you think it's so hard for us as believers who, I mean, we're supposed to know that the one who we are surrendered to is the all-powerful God, is the one from whom our strength comes from? Why do you think it's still difficult for us as believers to practice or even have a conception of permanent surrender?
Man, that's a hard one. And I'm going to jump it straight back to you. But Paul says this, knowledge puffs up, love builds up. We are brilliant at knowing things.
That's
and
good.
not always great at loving.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard when you think you know to love well. You know, sometimes I just need to be quiet and hear what my child is saying. Versus I actually know what's up. This kid might just actually wasting my time. Whatever it is. And I just think sometimes the challenge is just the fast-paced life we live. And the constant demand of time and money. And there's so much movement that sometimes to actually consider one's posture in a given situation becomes hard. But that's exactly why I'll throw it back at you. You know, so many great accolades, so many things you've done that speak not just of your caliber and character, but the spaces you're in. They're demanding spaces. You know, you must produce. You know, you can't just be there and be like David, write songs and by the trees. So how do you do it? How do you consider worship, surrender in such a fast-paced work environment? Dog eat dog kind of world.
Yeah. I'll say one of the things that has become so critical to me, actually being able to practice surrender, is inviting God into every single thing. So I have to consciously, before every meeting, before every engagement, before every deliverable, put all of those accolades, etc., that you've mentioned away and say, God, you are welcome here. Last year, I stepped into entrepreneurship. So after having built, a career over 11 years of working in corporate.
That's why you're carrying a modem around, Jay. That's like a true entrepreneur
We
life.
are hustling.
Always have
Always have the Wi-Fi ready.
Always have to be on.
Always have
have
the
to be
Wi-Fi
ready.
ready.
Always have to be ready. Right. And so I think one of the in me transitioning from that into the world of entrepreneurship, I had to surrender because I had built up this 11-year track record of things that I was thanking God for, but only when those things were stripped away from me, so to speak, I realized I had actually lived a life of thanking myself for them, because there's a part, I think, as you're talking about, we get so busy and the rote everydayness of things, the mundaneness of things starts to make you think that it is you who has actually achieved all of these things up until a point where you are almost stripped of it. And then you have to realize, oh, I'm actually not operating in my own strength. It has been God the whole time. And so in this new thing, what does it look like for me to accept that and move from that place? So literally saying, God, you are my CEO. Yes, I run a business, but you are the CEO. How do I run this meeting? How do I speak to this person? Because I don't have an idea of what the outcome is. So I think for me, it actually came from the place of being in a completely new space without my own knowledge, as you have come to say, and actually just entering into that space where, God, take over, you're in control, because I don't know.
That's dope.
I have a question to Bakang. Did when you ventured into entrepreneurship, was your idea of surrender, did you feel like it would look the same way as it would in your 11-year track year? I guess track year, yes, because I'm a Formula One fan. So when I think track, all I just think is just pit stop, box, but I want to ask, like, in our conversations about surrender, right, and having to venture off into something that feels like it requires more faith than,
absolutely,
right? Did it feel like surrender would feel different as like when you venture off into entrepreneurship as compared to your 11-year experience and the things that you've accumulated over time?
So it's a case of I didn't know what I didn't know. So I thought that, I live a surrendered life. I commune with God. I ask him for strategy, and God was definitely with me on that journey. But I think when you are called into something higher than what you have been doing and what you've been doing alone, you actually enter into completely new territory. And I've been saying to a couple of friends who've been asking, how's the journey going? I said, yes, it's about the business side of things, but I'm actually in a school of trust God more. Have faith in God more. And that's essentially what surrender looks like. And it goes back to what you were saying. It's really about who we are surrendered to. And I think that's what this process has taught me.
Yeah. Look, one critic that people have had about Christianity amongst many is, particularly in our continent and in our nation, given our history, that Christianity has kind of served as a means of muting the revolutionaries, quieting them, promising them some better distant glory out there in heaven, and whilst they suffer and carry their cross now, as if to encourage the muting of lions out in the field, in the battlefield, and I vehemently disagree with that. I think the problem with placing that on this generation as we have
Sure.
is what has led to the degree of anxiety and sense of constant unrest. But I think there is a way to fight with hands lifted on a hill. I think that's what this teaches us. There's no way anyone can look at Jesus' life and say he was just, overly sympathetic, did nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he was very clear. I'm only doing what the Father's called me to do. I know what my true north is. And I think we can fight, but we can fight well. When our heart is in the right place. Because if your heart's not in the right place and you lose, it will crush you. That's actually the story of Jehovah Nissi. It's a God who fights for you, and a God who fights for you is a God who favors you. Favor is dangerous to a heart that's not placed in the right place. You just take way too much credit that actually is not for you. Z, I know that for you, for instance, and maybe it's kind of a dovetail, but it's an important one for me, and it's why I was kind of looking forward to chatting with you on the podcast. Dad passed away about a year.
It's still cheapest. It was last year, August.
8 months.
So maybe like 8. 8 months. Yeah, 8 months.
And man, having walked with you for so many years and watched your relationship with your pops, and a very sensitive time, also getting married to your queen, as your dad would call her. The queen. Right?
Yeah.
How do you maintain this kind of high view of God in loss when it feels like I've lost the battle? I was with you. I was with you that evening along with other people at the hospital, that night. And I know, it's almost easy to kind of throw a few Christian words to it, but how have you tried to keep that sense of this is who God remains to be in what seems painful?
Very painful. So my dad passed on the 18th of August. And it was quite sudden, it was very sudden. We didn't even anticipate it. He collapses, 4 or 5 days in the hospital, looks like he's getting better, and then he just goes, right? I remember like 2 weeks after the funeral, walking on our street, and the only thing I could tell God is that I can't. That's I had no words to say. I was scared to dig deep in my emotions because I'd have to relive the pain. But I wanted to say something that would bring me as close to hope as possible without remembering the pain. The only thing I could say is, I can't. I don't know how to, right? Yeah. And I even remember there was a walk that we actually took, bro, when we had the smoothie. And I was actually sharing with Pastor Siv that I'm struggling to come to church because I don't see how other people are worshiping God while I'm in this pain.
I hear that.
I don't understand that, right? I'm struggling to worship with the same joy to the God that I know has been kind and compassionate and so loving and so accessible to me, that in this very moment I get, and I must say that the constant reminders that I had for me personally that that really affirmed who God was were the people around me.
Good.
Hey, good one.
And I have no words to express the amount of gratitude we have as a family when I think about how we were never in lack, not because of funeral policies, but because of people.
Yeah, so
right?
good. Yeah.
We were never in lack because it wasn't a financial thing. It was that people were there, right? And even when you were explaining the whole, concept of like a Roman soldier, right? The fact that, you don't go to war without your family.
Yeah,
right?
they fight as a family.
Exactly. We were at war. We were at war with each other. We, like when people were gone underneath the roof, we had misunderstandings. We had so many things, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that people were there, right, was a confirmation that, look, and I'll say it ka Setswana, right? Ke a itse gore o utlwa botlhoko. You know, I know you're in pain, my son. Mara ke teng. I'm here. You know.
How knows he?
How knows exactly? How knows
knows.
you are not alone. I think that's definitely the jingle. Jehovah Nissi.
Actually, how
let me
knows
tell you.
he?
Hey, how knows he?
I haven't understood.
Jehovah Nissi, how knows he?
I haven't understood a word you guys. I can't even get talking. Basically, I have no idea what you get talking.
Good one though. So how knows he meaning you are not alone,
Yes.
and reinforcing that. And I also like that works on both an individual level. So me reminding you that you are not alone because I'm here, but also in the sense of understanding that God is with you as well. So you're not alone in that sense. And I think just reflecting on some of the things that you said reminds me of a few pointers that you had, Pastor Siv, just about, I think, one, the practicality of how you actually maintain your faith in times of attack so that you can keep going back to God, can keep surrendering. So just the fact that you're saying, I mean, it's in the moment, I'm sure to you, going to church wasn't the easiest thing to do.
Wasn't.
It's not the natural thing to want to now go and praise, but you did it anyway. And in that place, you find communion, you find fellowship, and you see people praising the God that you're just like, oh, God, I'm struggling, you know? So I think that's really powerful.
Like, I think even there were many times where I got to church, I didn't really want to like speak to anyone because I knew they'd want to hug me, you know?
Yeah.
They'd want to say, Steelers, we're so sorry, man. Sorry that you lost your dad. And, you know, and like when I look back, like sometimes we're in so much pain that we reject the comfort that God wants to give us, you know, through people, you know, through words. And there were many instances where I had nothing to say, but I got the assurance that other people were saying things for me.
Yeah.
Sure.
People were praying
so
for me. People were
good.
praying for my family. And like even my mom was just saying that, you know, when we moved from Pretoria and we came to Joburg, her biggest concern was that she felt like she wouldn't have a community as like, and I'll say another one. So sorry, bro. But in like, bazalwane, right? They call it Tebeletso ya bomme.
Oh, that is a powerful movement.
Yes. So it's like the how direct translation, Bakang.
The community of the woman?
Yes, but the ministry of women or the ministry of the
but
mothers.
It's like a working ministry.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And it's just like you know, the mothers, the elderly ones, and you know, the ones who like they meet separately as well. And that for her was a big thing, right? It was a big thing.
It's a rite of passage.
It's a rite of passage, right? But when my father passed, that became so evident for us. You know, even for my sister and myself, as we saw that coming to life, it was like, man, okay, God already had a plan. You know,
It's good to see.
Yeah.
And I think part of where we transitioned to in the sermon was the Ephesians 6.
Yeah.
And I'm so appreciative of sharing that story, Z, because I think it sometimes feels confusing to know and trust a victorious God and face loss. At least what seems like loss. But the game is so long. It's like an eternal game we play. Where I love the way I think it's J.R. Tolkien who put it this way, and he said, you know, he's got this character he's talking about, and how this character wakes up from a dream and is like, oh my word, I thought this person died, but I see that they're alive, and I thought I was dead, and I see that I'm alive. And then they were like, man, I wonder if, you know, this is what it's going to be like in heaven, if the things we fear will actually be reversed. Right? And just idea that actually there is a place where the things we greatly dreaded, the loss of my mom, there will be a reverse where my mom is alive. My mom is well. My mom is in the presence of God, you know. And I think that there's a profoundness in a Christianity that's vibrant in hope.
Sure.
And it's exactly why we had to go through that armor. Talking about the belt of truth and how someone has to put it on you. And I actually want to pose this here.
Yeah.
To name someone that puts the belt on you.
To name someone
Yes.
that puts.
Because you can share the examples on
Yes.
Sunday. Who in your life tells you the truth, particularly who you've invited and said,
Oh yeah.
you tell me the
Yeah.
truth
Oh
about
sure.
my life.
Sure. Bagan, do you want to go? Or you?
Why do we want to go first? Okay, I'll go
okay.
first.
Yeah,
Yes.
while you
I'll
debating.
name.
Yeah.
This, for those who don't know, the Roman soldiers had this belt of truth that they were put on, but because of just the looseness and the complexity of the armor, many times someone would have to put the belt on them. And so what we were engaging in Ephesians 6 here was, we need the belt of truth, but who actually helps you put
It on.
So, yeah.
So for me, I'll name two people who are like prayer circle frontline, and they're both Every Nation Bryanston girlies. One is Sibahle Magadla, woman of God. The other, Popi Lusu, another woman of God.
Yeah.
And the way that they engage me with the truth actually is, of course, if I am going astray, they'll tell me, but how they've been so beneficial and impactful for me is actually reminding me of the truth of who God says I am.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's an area that I let go of more than I think, and then start operating in my own strength, and then start feeling like, oh no, I'm not serving God well enough. I'm not doing well enough. I am not the representative of God that I'm supposed to be, and I don't deserve this grace. And so the truth that they often have to speak to me to put me back on track is to say, no, but God says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. No, but God prepared you for a time such as this. And so for me, those two have been incredibly instrumental in reinforcing the truth, particularly around identity for me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's dope. With me, Pila, close friend of mine, Pila has been my accountability partner since we did Victory Weekend. For those that that know
the old school,
Victory Weekend, the old school, his people, and obviously in that should we call it program or releasing thing,
class,
right?
yes,
class, right? You have to pick an accountability partner at the end of the journey, right?
Yeah.
And at that moment for me, and I mean, look, the other guy is Tapelo, right? I feel like I have two guys that like balance out the two truths.
Yeah.
Because there's the truth that I would need to hear with regards to, my identity, what I'm struggling to believe in, similar to you, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the other truth where it's just, what you're doing here, yeah. Exactly, right? and especially in the spaces where I feel tempted to do something I'm not supposed to do, right? I know that like Pila and I, there was this app called Covenant Eyes, right? And I mean, obviously Covenant Eyes is to help you to avoid having to watch things that you're not supposed to be watching, right?
Great.
And I feel that in my life, the belt of truth hasn't just been about how am I reminded that I'm a son, but to also call out the truth on things I'm not supposed to do. Do you see what I mean?
Well said.
Yeah.
Right? It's not because I'm not gonna lie, I'm a words of affirmations guy, so I like nice things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I need you to say, "Ooh, Z,
you look great today."
Hey, come on, bro. I because I like that, but I also need a good balance of dude, you're not supposed to be. Also, why are you doing this? And I think what that has progressed into in some of the relationships that I have with some friends of mine is that they're able to pinpoint why I'm doing this. So, Pila sadly lost his father 3 weeks before my dad passed away.
Yeah.
Right. And a couple of years before he lost his brother. There were moments where I was able to pinpoint to him and say, bro, you're doing this because remember this year at this particular time, you lost something. You know what I mean? So when you're able to have people around you that are able to call truth and align it with a remembrance of something that has happened.
Yeah.
It has helped me personally.
Yeah.
You know
And
what
I like
mean?
that because it links to, again, the concept of fighting as a family, right? I think you shared that the Roman soldiers would like have to live together for 20 to 30 years. So this is somebody who's seen you walk
Exactly.
for a long time who can then start to pick up those patterns.
Exactly.
One thing I didn't say on Sunday around the belt of truth. So think about it. There's the way you actually put it on someone. It's twofold. One is doctrine, right? Doctrine. This word is the authority, and so that's why actually when we gather around the preached word of Jesus. We gather around the function and the power of the Holy Spirit. We gather around the purpose, the will of the Father. We gathering to submit ourselves, our lives to the word. Doctrine must be put on us. When we self-make doctrine, it becomes problematic. But also there's the personal conviction, truth that is personal and specific to you.
Yes.
And that's what you're referring to. It's like, man, okay, now I've gone through a loss. I might understand the doctrine of a resurrection, the doctrine of eternal hope. But my day to day, there's things I'm wrestling with where at times I need truth to help me escape despair. I'll never forget one Sunday, you were upstairs in the circle,
bro.
Dad had just passed, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and every Sunday where I saw you, my man was crying, and totally understand. And this time I sat next to you, and I didn't say anything.
Yeah, you didn't actually.
It was awkward.
You know what he did? He just said, he came next to me. I even remember, bro, the frequency of the taps he had on my leg. You know, like when someone goes, you know,
it was consistent.
Yes, it was like a 1, 2, 3, 1. Rub 1, 2, 3. You know, but I remember it was, bro. But that was.
Look, I remember you stood up, went to the bathroom, you were crying, came back, and we didn't talk much. The only thing I said to you is, "Hey, bro, you need to go and be with your wife now, and like be legit." You know.
And you said I need to go clean my face.
Go clean your face and go be with
it
your
wife. It was a mess. But anyway,
now there's context to that.
Sure.
And the context is, hey, like I don't want you to fall in despair.
Mm.
And there's a truth sometimes that doesn't take away the fact that we have to grieve.
Yeah.
Because there's other times where there's nothing to say. I can't tell you to go wipe your face. Other times I'm just there crying with you. And it's that ministry of presence. Whilst there are times where it's that ministry of truth where you're like, all right, bro, you're going to have to wipe your face and take your wife out on a date. You know, because there's still things to be grateful for. This God is still good. You know, this God is still faithful, and you received it well. But you were teaching me a lesson in the way you really engage your wife even in that moment. For me, I got a couple of folks. My wife is one of them, but you know, there's sometimes in marriage where it's tricky to be that person. So I've got Mandla, and the way I put it for me is I've got people who are there, and then people who are becoming.
That's good.
I can feel, there's an openness in both of our lives, and growing that way. So, where Mandla has been that guy for me, Bongani is that guy for me, and Jamini. I'm thinking of Joel. There's been times where Joel Bryce has been that guy for me. Sure, I'm forgetting somebody now. Jules Bakunzi. It's been that guy for me, and it's been so helpful for the soul.
Sure.
You know, this Sunday is one of those where, for whatever reason, got home, I was so heavy, and I thought, I am doing a terrible job at pastoring this church.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh. Bro, so many
this
times.
Sunday of all Sundays, that's so interesting. After the service where we were like, oh my word.
I should get pastors around this table, and we should just have a Sunday of like, all right, tell people how you really feel.
How you really feel.
Yeah. And you know, there's some of those Sundays where on the Monday, you just want the ground to open up and just swallow you whole. Just like, man, somebody else should have been a pastor of this church. Without any provocation or whatever, I get a message from Bongani, you know, and it's timely.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know that I'm busy chopping it up at home thinking, oh, I'm terrible. And I wasn't even thinking about the sermon, just thinking about everything. Just going, man, Lord, help me, And it's people like that who, with a word, can get you out of despair.
Sure.
If you open your heart to them.
Sure.
So good.
I was actually thinking, bro, Sunday morning was also, there were a lot of moving parts. You know what I mean? And back to, I think one of your first points where you were mentioning how, like, there isn't a record in the Bible that speaks about why Amalek was attacking the Israelites.
Oh, yeah. For no reason.
Yes, it was like, for no reason. I mean, I'm here. You know what I mean? And
we're fighting.
Exactly, right? And it almost feels like whenever something great is about to happen, there's that thing that happens, something just practically becomes a huge mess, like I was thinking on my way here, and I was telling Bagan that on my way here, like traffic was a mess. And in a very unusual way,
So unusual for a Tuesday.
Right? For like a Tuesday, But I think what I'm also just, I guess, reminded of is that sometimes when, like you said, when the enemy just pounces, right? We often think that our response is pounce back.
Yeah.
Sure.
With either the same aggression or with the same, is it tenacity? Is that the word to use? You used another word that I didn't even know
good
what
word,
that
brother.
meant. Yeah.
Veracity, maybe?
I don't even know. I don't even remember anymore.
Just playing.
Right? Yeah. But I think I'm reminded that, man, the way that you respond in situations, it counts so much, not even to the places that are evident to you where you can see that there's a change, but even to the spaces around you that you may not even be aware of.
Oh, yeah.
Can I then ask a question? And it's a discipleship question, because I know both of you make disciples and both of you are engaging people, but the breastplate of righteousness, we spoke about two types of righteousness. This sanctification, progressive. You're in the word, you're praying.
Doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing.
Preaching the word of
for
God.
the right
Doing the
reason.
Lord's work.
You know what I mean? You do the right thing for the right reason. And then this other layer, justification, which is the righteousness of God.
Yeah.
In what ways have you seen, when you're thinking of friends and discipleship and people that you've helped walk through kind of journey of following Jesus, do you think that people really do feel that they have a grasp of justification, of this righteousness of God thing? Or do we live and die on the progressive revelation, which is maybe why there's a lot of feeling of condemnation and guilt? I don't know what you found in your space as you're engaging with people.
Yeah, so I'll say that even for me, and I've also seen this in the relationships that I have built from a discipleship perspective, it just feels like that layer of justification is really hard. Because I think that's what you said something now that, like, it seems like condemnation is very active.
Yes.
And I don't know what it is about the spaces that we are in, the way we built our lives, that just makes it so hard to believe that it can be possible for God to forgive and to fully receive us as who we are, as who He created us to be. And that it's so hard to believe that when God sees me, that He sees the righteousness of Christ and not my righteousness. And what I've picked up for myself and in other people is that the missing link sometimes tends to be a works-based conceptualization of how God engages with us. And I think that also comes from the society that we live in and the systems of the world. So the fact that, so you mean I don't have to do anything to receive this from God, to be justified? And it blows your mind, but almost to the point of you don't believe it.
Yeah.
That's a great response. Z?
Look, I mean, my so I think So when you mentioned it on Sunday, I immediately thought about how in Justification, so I guess the second part, right, where you have to believe that through your mistakes, you're still loved, right? That through your wrongdoings, whether intentional or they're not intentional, you still belong, right? I don't know. A part of me just, I don't know, man. I feel like my mind just quickly went to, the idea of how sometimes we twist that around, where we become so entitled in justifying that, no, but I'm still a child of God. So I can, did you see what I mean?
Sure.
And I think this morning when I was thinking about it, I really thought that, could it be that part of the second part of the process of justification, right, is also knowing that what does that mean to be justified, right? It means that there's a knowledge, a wisdom, and a word that affirms you as a son, but you too need to be part of that process of justification. Did you see what I mean?
There's a role.
Exactly. It can't just happen that, Zealous, you made a mistake. You didn't speak to your wife well, or whatnot, whatever. And then it's like, but I'm still a son, or whatnot. It's that the work continues once you've been justified, right? The work continues once you've been affirmed. Exactly. And I feel that's where we miss it a lot, right? I know that sometimes I could feel so entitled in thinking that, man, I still belong, but am I actually doing the work in knowing what that means?
Yeah. It almost feels like, God is too kind for us to believe. Which makes it really hard to believe.
Exactly.
It's just like, this vicious cycle. You're like,
if he was just like a little bit mean, if he was just task driven,
just a little bit more consequences.
We get it, But actually, I look back, whether it be Reformation, church history, the fundamental changes that happened when people believed that they were justified by grace. By having faith in Christ alone. And what it did in them is kind of spur the kind of life that said, I couldn't earn an ounce of what I have. This Jehovah Nissi who's directly fought against my Goliath. That's a funny thing. We look at the David and Goliath story and we think, this David and Goliath story is about being courageous and stepping up against the biggest things in your life. No. Theologically, the story is about there is a greater David who conquers the Goliaths that we are all too scared and incapable of facing. And when he rocks up, he literally, like David, rocks up. You know what I mean? And takes the Goliaths out. And guess who got the victory? It wasn't just David. The Israelites did. And so it's that thing of, hey, there is this Jehovah Nissi who's fought against our Goliaths, giving us a victory we did not deserve, and yet saying, live victorious. And then we're like, wait, but can I fight something? Can I just contribute?
I do something so that I can.
But the contribution comes, now we give all of our lives.
Sure.
Because we go, man, you paid a debt I couldn't pay. I just can't forget people in my life who showed up in a specific time. And, this happened to me last year. Marsha and I have been trusting for this certain amount of debt to be paid off. And this random person, really who had hardly known us, just said, hey, boom, I'm going to cover this thing. Now, when that person calls me and engages me about something, my word, like there's this place of undeserved grace that you respond from. It's not that they are taking advantage of it, but it's just through relationship. How do you even begin to... And that's why I think Christianity is all about thanking God. That's what obedience is about. We're just responding by going, Lord, thank you for this grace. Thank you for this mercy, So I think it's great.
But I think, we struggle with understanding that concept because we live in a world that we've been taught that, even from a young age, bro, as a child, we've been taught that there is a reward to something that you do.
Yes,
Which is true.
You're not taught to value what you do. You are taught to value the reward. You see
That's
what
good.
I mean?
That's a good distinction.
Right? There's
Growth mindset.
currently working on youth program,
Yeah.
and it speaks about growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. It's a growth mindset.
And the growth mindset speaks about how you value what you do more than valuing the outcome of it.
Yeah.
That's it,
Right?
there.
And I think about it even in worship. Like when I'm thinking about, when Moses was there, I'm sure for him what he valued was just this. Like his hand, that's what he valued. You know what I mean? To the point where he came to the end of himself. And then, Aaron and her had to like had to come through and also value what he valued.
Yeah.
And
fair.
be part of that, So I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really dope.
It reminds me, I think it's Romans 6:11? It kind of goes into a little bit of an explanation saying that if not by work, it had to have been by grace, because if it was not by grace and by works, then grace would actually no longer be grace.
Absolutely.
Free and undeserved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even with that, I mean, this podcast, or rather this sermon, is going to be quite closely linked to the next one, Jehovah Jireh, which we all think is about money.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Because we might realize money is not the central part of it, but it's linked because of this issue of God taking our place, God giving us what we don't deserve, right? And I think through that, and I go, it's my hope, even as people are watching this, is that they'll be asking questions. In fact, you can pop right now under this video, pop some questions in there, because I think the continuity of this discussion going on to next week is going to be helpful, especially when we're grappling through what is theologically known but experientially maybe misunderstood.
That's good.
Which is righteousness and justification and this free gift given to us by God. So I think that's going to be important.
That's good. And that's a brilliant segue into our question of the week.
Come on.
Are you ready? Zealous, are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm asking you because you know this person very well who asked this question, but they will be unnamed for the purpose of anonymity and to not put you on the spot.
It's your mother who asked this question. You gotta know, Ma is probably watching this. Ma, this is your question to your son.
Mama Ubi.
Yes. And if I could just share a quick story, I actually met your mom, I think, at a Rosebank worship night.
Oh, yeah.
And she literally she's like, "Oh, hi, Ngwanaka, how are you?" Like, "Dumela me." She's like, "Okay, get na mahozilas. You know my son."
Hey, listen.
So such
proud.
a proud mom, such a proud mom. We love it.
Really
and
great.
so her question says, is it ideal to share the gospel with a non-believer when they are in pain or have lost something or when they have real problems?
Yeah, because if they have fake problems, you can't be coming at them with
I mean, why are we even speaking?
I mean,
Real problems.
No, because of that, they got fake problems.
I mean, look, I mean, yes, man. Like, I think sometimes we ask ourselves the question, should we share the gospel? We ask ourselves that question.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, well, firstly, there's the muscle to being able to, I guess, testify and, share the gospel and the word, right? But if it's really transformed you, right? By the renewing of your minds, and you know what I mean? As in, if it's really gotten to the place where you have valued what it's done for you, then you'd want to give it to someone else. That's the way I see it. But I think what we struggle with is that, what does that look like? As in, do you just take the Bible and just like open your mouth and then just put the put the Bible inside, or are there real like ways of giving the word or the gospel, or giving preaching to someone when they're going through something without it feeling like, oh, now they Bible bashing.
Yeah,
do you see what I mean?
This as an opportunity.
Do you see what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah, I think we ask ourselves that because of that question, and maybe it may be that we haven't really maybe anchored ourselves in the gifts God has given us.
Yeah.
I think it would be fair only if we allowed ourselves to call other things bashing as well. You know what I mean? I think Bible bashing is helpful to mute the Christian in their mission, which is not new. That's exactly what they did to the Europeans. They just said, hey, this Christian thing is your personal truth. And they shut them down completely. And we kind of have bought into that exact same lie that Christianity no longer belongs in the public square of ideas. That when you bring it into the public, right, it's a defiance of someone else's personal space. Whilst I look at that question, I think absolutely, but also I'm reminded Rick Warren put it this way, that people are most susceptible to the good news when they are in the process of change.
That's good.
Whether it be pain, whether it be moving from one place to another, because there's certainties that the gospel give us that life can't guarantee us. And sometimes the sharing of the good news, the good news in it is there is a God who became man, lived the life we should have lived, died the death we deserved, raised on the third day, and now we have new life. Therefore, you who are in a place of uncertainty have now a fortified certainty because of the resurrection and the promise of the resurrection and the pain and suffering and the life that Christ went through. There is a place where we actually can have joy unspeakable, peace undescribable, because of this reality of what the good news has brought. This kingdom now has come into our lives in a very profound way. So I think it's important and necessary. I think there are times where, yes, we're there caring, but I think it's good to share. And should be a priority to share.
And to quote a preacher that I often listen to named Siviwe, there was a sermon, I think last year sometime, I think it was around when we were doing the Bible challenge. And you said to us that when in doubt, like when it comes to Bible reading, that we should always also come with the belief that the gospel or the good news has the ability to do what it has said it will do, what God has said it will do, right? So I think when I see the question, that's what I think about. And to say, of course, in my personal, I'm like, I'm not a pastor, I'm not this. I don't know exactly the words to say, but what I do know is that God says that his word works.
Absolutely.
And that's almost back to the whole sermon series, right? So what if we believed that when we shared the good news, even if we didn't have the perfect words to say it, if we didn't have the perfect testimony, what if we believed that even that is something that God can and will use to achieve what he wants to?
Absolutely. And no one can take away that story. Your story. And the ability to just share, hey, you're in the middle of a crisis, but let me tell you the last time I was in a crisis. And here's how God came through for me. And the only way I'm understanding and experiencing this is because this is the kind of God I'm talking about. And beginning to relay this story. And I love what Kevin York said when he was here. You know, if you can't convince them, confuse them. You know, and his whole point obviously was give it a try. Like fail trying instead of just not saying anything. So great question. That's great. All right, bro. Do you have a jingle?
I think. Look, we already created a jingle. I wanted. Look, bro, we're gonna be spontaneous, bro. That's what we're gonna do.
I think Jehovah Nissi.
I'm gonna have to create this jingle for you.
No. Okay. Let's see.
Wait.
Are you sure?
How much time do we have left? Are we done?
No. Let's create the jingle. Let's go.
We're just creating the jingle. Can't you talk about the Bible one more time?
Okay. What you want to say?
These guys want the jingle. You know, we'll hit the jingle now. But read the Bible, guys.
Mm.
I don't know how else to keep saying this.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to say it every podcast. We need a thing here.
That says
Amar.
read the Bible.
Yeah.
That keeps going.
Read
Read
this
the
Bible.
Yeah.
Read this Bible. Fall in love with the God of this Bible.
Yeah.
You know, because there is so much life for us who live in a broken world.
Mm.
In this word with the Spirit, and I mourn when I'm walking with people who their circumstances have become the reason why they can't believe the word.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, where else are you gonna go?
Yeah.
Like,
where can we
please
go?
tell me where you're gonna find the words of life if you can't come to this baby
Yeah.
when everything is chaotic. Then you know
Where
what I mean?
else?
It's
What
going to
other
be really
foundation?
challenging.
I wanted to just a follow up to that though. Want to ask, maybe it's now like a question. Okay.
Okay.
But do you guys think that maybe we struggle to read the word or to stay in the word or to even know the word, right? Because we ourselves are so maybe fixed on, you know, how the recipient is supposed to receive it, including myself, versus what the work of the word is actually supposed to do. Do you know what I mean? Because when I'm thinking about it, I mean, I remember when, excuse me, we were on varsity and we had to go evangelize and go speak with people and, you know, all those things. And I think we were just worried about, you know, are we going to be received, you know? And I asked myself, I'm like, do we struggle to read or to be anchored in the word because we focus so much on, or we've seen how it's been received that we ourselves are like, do we, you know, and we don't trust the actual process of the work that it's supposed to do, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure there's many struggles as to it, but for now, I'll just say, just spend time in the word daily. You know, in fact, post on the podcast if it will be helpful for you to have a podcast where we're actually just going through how to study the Bible. You know, taking a chapter at a time, or you're taking a chapter and just breaking it down. If that stuff will be helpful for you. But man, I can't tell you, you know, I think there's many reasons as to why we don't. Whether we feel like, oh, it's because I don't understand or, oh, you know, whatever. But if you actually put the time, you begin to realize the impact of your life because you're changing the diet of what you're putting in. And it's the only book, I don't care what great classics you've read, it's the only book that reads you. It's the only book that reveals your heart back to you, you know. So anyway, I wish you could create a jingle as well, but I don't think the Bible is able to do
create a jingle about the Bible. That's a recital. Hey.
Is that our first take? Is that the first take of the jingle?
All right, no, let's do something fast, quick.
Hit us.
Okay.
I trust you. You
can't leave me alone. We started something. How about
I'm a helper, yeah.
Oh, okay. Jehovah Nissi. Anosi. I can
nosy.
He's holy.
Oh.
Okay, have you got it?
Jehovah Nissi.
Jehovah Nissi.
How nosy.
How nosy. Okay.
You go Jehovah Nissi. How nosy. He's holy.
That's
it. Okay. Let's go, bro.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Hey, Jehovah Nissi.
How nosy.
He's holy.
Jehovah Nissi.
How nosy.
He's holy. Terrible. Way to go.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning into this podcast. And as mentioned, if you have questions or comments, please do leave them in the box below. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on Stuff We Didn't Say on Sunday.
Hey.
Peace.